This episode of the Beauté Industry podcast was brought to you by Murad Skincare Australia. Hello and welcome to the Beauté Industry podcast, your online support community for the professional beauty industry. I am your host, founding director of Beauté Industry, Tamara Shaw. Here we are closing the competitive gap and speaking your language. This is a platform created and dedicated to the professional beauty industry, valuing community over competition. We serve to help connect you with inspiration from industry experts, expand your knowledge through educational pieces, and bring you the latest in product and technology innovation. This is Beauté Industry. Today's guest I was fortunate enough to be introduced to by friend of the Beauté Industry podcast, Fiona Tuck. After an introduction and a listen to their podcast, Inside Aesthetics, I wanted to bring Dr. Jake Sloan and David Segal to your ears. A wealth of knowledge between them, the pair have dived into the podcasting world themselves, sharing both patient and practitioner knowledge from people they have connected with along their journey. I sat down with them in their Sydney recording space for the conversation today, where we explored the medical arena, what it means to be an owner of a franchise laser clinic, and the metrics of being a male in a female-dominated industry. Here's Dr. Jake Sloan, David Segal, and myself for Beauté Industry. David and Jake,
Good morning.
Hello.
Welcome to the Beauté Industry podcast.
Thank you. We're super excited to be here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We're on the other side of the microphones today.
When podcasters get podcasted.
Yeah. Cross-pollination of the podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's it
That's
called?
actually
Is
how
it
we
called
met, wasn't
a swapcast? Is that what it's called?
I don't know.
Swapcast.
Yeah.
Is there
That's
a verb for it?
Apparently.
Or an adjective, should I say?
There you go.
I didn't know that was a word. There you go. We start every episode the same way each week in finding out how business owners and industry influencers like yourself came into the industry. Because I think, social media is all very glossy and we're running around injecting and running businesses, and we don't actually realise the long pathway that it took to get into the industry. And I think our audience goes, but how can I get there? It's all great and well that they are a business owner or that they are this influential person, but how do I actually make that happen? So I'd love to start with you, Jake.
Okay. God, this is a long story. If you really want to hear the full story, listen to episode 1 of our podcast. So I'm a doctor, and I guess I now would call myself a facial aesthetic injector. So my day-to-day job is working in various clinics doing cosmetic injectables. Anti-wrinkle, filler, fat dissolvers are the main 3 things that I do. How did I get into that? So I trained as a doctor in the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent. I moved to Australia about 4.5 years ago. And very early on in my career, I knew I wanted to do surgery. I had a slight lean towards possibly doing plastic surgery, but when you're a baby doctor, you don't really know what path you're going to be following. So I jumped around various surgical specialties, and quite early on, I trained in cosmetic injectables. My wife actually was working in a clinic in London as a therapist. She's actually a naturopath by trade. And her clinic owner said, well, cosmetic injectables are kind of a thing now. This is quite a long time ago. It's about 2007, I think it was. Why don't you train and do some basic stuff, and maybe you could work here in your spare time? And because I was thinking about training anyway, having a sort of an interest in plastic surgery, I thought, sure, that would be a great skill to have. Yeah. So I went away and did a course with a plastic surgeon, a guy called Adrian Richards, and I think the course was called Cosmetic Courses. Just did a weekend, very basic course, and I had some, really simple skills, and then sort of developed a small little business for myself in the UK alongside my surgical training. And I kind of feel like I need to fast forward now, because now I've moved to Australia. And I moved to Australia originally for the surgery. I was still a hospital doctor when I moved.
Okay.
I realised I probably couldn't do another 30 years of hospital work. It's a significant grind. It's a 100-hour week. I was getting a little bit tired, and we had our first child at that point, and I was a bit of a crossroads, and ultimately ended up leaving hospital medicine and pursuing a cosmetic injectable career full-time. So I worked in a few clinics around Sydney. That's eventually how David and I met, through one of his clinics here in Sydney, and here I am. So I've been doing facial aesthetics for around 11 years now, full time.
Amazing.
Was really lucky last year that I guess my work has been recognised by Allergan, who are one of the sort of providers and trainers in this sort of industry, and I'm now a trainer and a sort of a key opinion leader, if you like, for Allergan. So I've sort of been lucky in the respect that not only am I injecting, but I'm training, I'm sort of learning myself. Just yesterday and the day before, we were on a weekend sort of train the trainers type event. So really sort of looking to make myself a very rounded influencer within the industry. I'm not just an injector. I'd hope to be an educator and everything else.
Amazing.
So that's my story.
Amazing.
There you go.
What does a normal day look like for you? Because you there's so many elements to your role.
Yeah, look, I mean, of course, the podcast is a weekly thing, so that's become a mainstay, and sometimes we're recording 2 or 3 times a week, depending on who's in town. But I guess, I work 5 days a week. My weekend is Sunday, Monday, usually. So that's actually quite nice, having a Monday as your Sunday. Everyone else is back at work, and I can just go to the bank and do all those really boring things. But yeah, like, my hours are quite flexible, which is nice. So I sometimes get a morning to be with my kids and my family. But injecting, I guess I'll try to get there early, prep for the day, look at the client list. I try and sort of like to know who's coming before I meet those people if I can. Obviously, if they're new, it's different. And then basically just inject and enjoy myself. And I think it's very rare that someone can say that they love their job, but I genuinely do. And sometimes you get lost in it and the day goes by and you think, oh my God, it's finished already. So yeah, I'm really lucky in that respect.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. And what about yourself, David?
Wow, my story sounds very boring compared to Jake's.
Please, can you start?
I should have started first, so then you would just continue to go. I got into the industry by accident. It's been about 15 years now. So I left school, didn't know what I wanted to do, started a business degree, didn't finish it, studied mortgage broking, didn't use it, did marketing degree, didn't use it.
Yeah.
Eventually just got into sales. So I worked for a company selling door-to-door alarm systems for a while. I didn't know that. I've done every job. Like, I've worked retail. I just couldn't find what I was passionate about.
Would you call yourself a bad employee?
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing led to another. I ended up working for Fitness First for a few years as a membership consultant. It's one of those annoying people that used to like hand out free passes, inferring that you needed to lose weight or go to the gym. So did that, and then eventually went on and started managing their clubs. So I was managing their clubs when I was in my early 20s. It was good training. There wasn't as much emphasis on fair work and rules and regulations around expectations on staff. So they did push us really, really, really hard. But it was great training from a sales perspective. And then I met one of the members at one of the gyms, and he wanted to have this amazing idea to import lasers from overseas and sell them to doctors here in Australia. And he said, "Do you want to do it with me?" I said, "Well, sure. I've had enough of Fitness First. I've been there for a few years now." So we did that. The business failed dismally. We forgot about tax and GST and all these sorts of things.
All the finer details.
We thought we were doing well, and then we realised we had all these bills that we couldn't pay. So that business sort of disappeared. But during that time, I met a doctor who was studying anaesthetics, and he was moonlighting sort of like Jake was a little bit in injectables. And we went on to start Cosmos Clinic together. So that was Joseph Ajaka. So we started that clinic together in, 2007, something like that, a long time ago. And I was there for a long time with him. We started that practice together, and it's a very successful business. Well, it was then, and even more so now. And then during that time, I was approached by a gentleman by the name of Bobak, who, if anyone in the industry has met him, is a very sort of big personality. Everyone knows who he is. He's very, very interesting guy. And he said, "Come on, I'm starting this business. Would you like to come on board and sort of help us with growth?" And one thing led to another, and I ended up investing in one of their clinics. I ended up selling my apartment to actually invest in one of their clinics. So it was a big call at the time. And then it's from there, gosh, I've been involved in LCA now for, I don't know, over 10 years, probably.
Yeah.
No, more than, 10 or 11 years. And when I was at Cosmos, I wrote and published a book that was published through Fairfax Media called Skin. And that was basically the layperson's guide to understanding cosmetic treatments. So I was doing like morning show and a bit of regular TV stuff with them. But the reason for the book was working with so many doctors and nurses. I sort of saw that there was a lot of people, especially during that time in the industry, there was a lot of mystery around procedures, and doctors didn't really have the same bedside manner or the same like it was almost like a lot of things were lost in translation. People, the layperson didn't understand. And that's why I wrote the book, was layperson's introduction to understanding cosmetic procedures. So then fast forward, I've now got 3 LCA clinics. I did dabble a little bit in the surgical industry for a few years, but now my focus is the podcast and running my clinics. And yeah, that keeps me pretty busy.
Amazing. What was it like for you thinking, should I sell my apartment?
Oh,
because
very
that's
scary.
huge.
Very scary. Yeah. Well, when I had the apartment, the property market was sort of quite average. And I thought, look, I'm young. I don't have any kids. If it all goes wrong, I live in a country where, you know, I'm not going to be destitute on the street. It's the worst case scenario.
Just go back to mum and dad.
Yeah.
The worst case is actually not that bad. So I thought, you know, I think taking a risk is probably what is the biggest barrier for people sort of taking that next step in their career, is the fear of failure. Or what if it all goes wrong, and sort of catastrophizing that their life's going to completely fall apart if they make a mistake or it doesn't go exactly according to plan. So I thought, I'm young. What's the worst that can happen?
Why not?
Give
I
it
think
a go.
you know, that true entrepreneur. You've got that not gambler mentality, but you hedge your bets. You know, you did a lot of formal degrees when you were younger and it didn't suit you, but you've got that gift of understanding business and people, and melding those two things together often can't be taught.
Yeah. It's crazy being a guy involved in this industry as well, because I think it is a very, especially on like the beauty side of things, a very female dominated industry.
Yes.
So understanding how it works and getting the respect of your staff and sort of engaging with clients, and it's a challenge for sure. I think very, very challenging, but I've been doing it such a long time now.
Yes.
But the funny thing is, the more you learn, the more you realize you really don't have any idea. Like, it's just that people surprise you every day. There's new situations that crop up that you have to deal with. But I think I love the industry. I love being involved in it. And I think that's and we sort of preach this a little bit, or sort of discuss this a lot, is that if you're doing a job that you're not passionate about, there's only so far you're going to go. You're going to hate your life. You spend so much time at work. If you don't truly love what you do, then every day is a drag. You're never going to excel at it. And I guess I've been lucky enough to find an industry that I really, really like.
Yes.
I love doing it. So despite all the stresses and things that go on, and sort of, you know, sometimes make your day a bit miserable, when you put it in perspective, and for the most part you love what you're doing, it's not an issue.
Yes. There's so much there that I want to come back on, especially being a male in a female-dominated industry, and also finding out your pathway from 1 clinic to 3 clinics, which is huge. But Jake, I just want to ask you, because you moved countries, and you're also got that element of risk as well. And a lot of therapists ask me, because I did the opposite to you. I went to the UK, you came to Australia.
Oh, did you?
So we're probably passing each other on the plane waving. But in this industry, you know, the cruise ships is a big thing that a lot of therapists ask me, you know, should I go, or even should I go and live on Hamilton Island? And I want to ask you that, how did you just pack up everything and move and take that risk?
It kind of was a bit like that. My motivation was still when I was a hospital doctor. So to be clear, I didn't move as an injector, but I got to a point in my career in the UK where I literally was at not just a crossroads, but almost a dead end. There are a lot of issues with the health system in the UK and training, and you know, I'm not the first British doctor to come to Australia. It's a very, very common thing. So I sort of was limited by, you know, what country could I go to? Who's going to recognise my qualifications? Where can I speak the language, etc. And where would be nice to live? So, you know, Australia was pretty obvious choice, including America. I couldn't move to America, not that I wanted to, because I don't have the qualification to work there.
Right.
So I think any therapist thinking of, that big move, the first thing is, can I legally work there? Can I get a visa? And can I want my qualifications recognized? So a lot of people moving here with various qualifications, be it in the medical or non-professional trade, to realize, oh God, no one's going to employ me because I don't recognize my, plumbing qualification or whatever it is. So that's a key thing. But yeah, it was a huge thing. I mean, I got the job offer, I think it was 1st of November, the day before my birthday. And we were here living in Australia, and I had done my first shift by the 2nd week of January.
Wow.
It was mental. And I remember I got that email, I was getting up early for work, and I sort of nudged my wife and said, hey, we're moving to Australia.
Yeah, right.
We sort of knew it was on the horizon because obviously I'd applied for the job, but I was told very clearly, you are at the end of the pile because we have to offer the job to all of Australians first. So if just by chance 150 people don't tick the box, then you might get a job offer if you're really lucky. And somehow, still don't know how, but I got that offer. So yeah, it was a very, very quick move, lots of organizing. Thank God we didn't have kids at that point. So literally we quit our jobs that day. And it's sort of a chicken egg when you move country. You need the job offer before you can get the visa, but you also need a visa to get the job offer. So there's a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork going on at that point. And yeah, it's a massive move. But I do think for anyone thinking of, just moving city, let alone country, just, you can't get too bogged down in the detail. At some point you have to take a leap of faith and say, all right, broadly speaking, this is going to be a fun move. It might just be for the adventure, and if it doesn't work out, I've still got home to come back to. But yeah, we haven't looked back, to be completely honest. And obviously my career has changed since. I was a hospital doctor, and now I'm a full-time facial aesthetic injector.
So clinic owner, doctor injector, how do you two meet? And then what makes you decide to start a podcast?
Go on, David, you start.
Well, when I purchased the most recent clinic that I own, Jake had just started there, or was going to start there as an injector. And I think he sort of hit it off straight away. We're both, I guess, exactly the same age, born on the same day, same year.
Bizarre.
Wow.
Really bizarre.
Yeah, both Jewish, which is kind of interesting. Sort of part of the inner circle. Similar sort of sense of humor. We just sort of became good mates straight away. And so Jake comes to the clinic, and he's doing an amazing job there. And we sort of always throwing around business ideas and things for the future, and bouncing ideas off each other. And then one day Jake comes to me and says, "Oh look, I've got this idea for a podcast. Would you like to come on as a guest?" I'm like, "Yeah, cool, whatever." And then I'm not sure if it was the same day or a couple of days later.
About 5 minutes later.
Yeah, you said, actually, maybe we do it together. And I was like, yeah, cool. And that was it, really. And I mean, we never, from my perspective, never did it to make money. Never wanted to, I guess, compromise on the guests that we have. We want to be able to choose who we talk to, ask the questions that we want to ask without being beholden to anyone or worrying about trying to monetize it. So for us, it was a passion project because we saw, I think Jake saw as well, there's still a lot of misinformation. And when you go to someone's website or you go to this social media, it's highly curated.
Yes.
Everyone's putting their best before and afters. Every word is being considered and edited. And I think these days people are just screaming out for authentic content. They want to get to know people. They want the good, the bad, the ugly. Just because we're just advertised and marketed to, and everyone's trying to sell you something, and so everyone's got an angle or an agenda. So the podcast platform allows us to have as much as possible an unedited conversation. I mean, we'll send the content to someone just broadly to make sure they're happy with everything that's sort of been spoken about, but we try and keep it unedited and just flowing. And then especially with people like doctors and I guess healthcare providers, where patients want to get to know the person.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get to know the person behind the marketing, behind the name, behind the website. And do I trust this person with my body? So that, from my perspective, is what's engaging about the podcast.
Yeah, I mean,
what about you, Jay?
I guess it was conceived well, it was ill-conceived because I just came up with it overnight. But basically,
Same here, don't worry.
it's a platform to talk about anything. And it's a platform similar to what you were saying about your own reason why you started Beauté Industry. It was something that was missing from our industry. We very commonly go into our own little clinic and pretend that we're the best, and the guys down the road are rubbish and so on. And actually that's not the reality. I feel like if we can talk to other providers, be they surgeons, dermal therapists, nutritionists, whoever, and actually get some sort of core unified message where we're all pushing in a similar direction, then at least that's going to educate consumers or practitioners in a way that seems ethical and on the same sort of direction, I guess. So yeah, that's where Inside Aesthetics came from. I guess our core topic is look good, feel good. But, with our podcast with you, we've taken a little spin down the business behind these industries that have popped up, be it injectables, surgery, or other sort of allied niches of the aesthetics industry. We recently did a meditation podcast because it's innately sort of looking at your inner health, I guess, rather than your cosmetic superficiality.
Yes.
So we're trying to be quite broad in how we interpret aesthetics and cosmetics.
Yeah, and some of the episodes resonate more with listeners in terms of consumers or potential patients, and some resonate more with healthcare professionals.
Yeah, sure.
So it's hard to be everything to everyone, but I guess we just sort of try and have conversations that we think are interesting. And I mean, even if no one listens to our podcast, I just love having these conversations with people because I learned so much. I get to sit down with people like yourself or like Dr. Jeremy Hunt talking about facelifts or whatever. I mean, normally you pay, $300 or $400 to sit down and have a chat with this person for half an hour. We get to sit here for an hour and pick their brain, and it's just for selfish reasons. I love doing it. Yeah.
You enjoy it.
Yeah.
And we met through, the connection of Fiona Tuck, who many of our guests, many of our audience know. She's featured on our podcast quite a few times, and you have also had her
and
as
she's
a
coming
guest
back
on your podcast
for more.
Yeah, because nutrition's changing so much. There's new stuff all the time.
Queen.
Yeah, well, she started her own podcast now.
She has.
The Forensic Nutritionist Podcast. Yeah.
Yes. So what other guests or kind of topics do you go down?
We've had a few surgeons on. So we've had Dr. Jeremy Hunt talking about facelifts. We've had Dr. Joe Ajaka talking about lipo, body contouring, Brazilian butt lifts. We've had Dr. Alex Poon doing mummy makeovers. We've had Dr. Puriya Maradi talking about both, the standard breast augmentation with implants as well as more breast reconstruction for cancer and other indications. But then we've gone down kind of an injectable path to some extent with Penny Timberlake. She's our sort of resident nurse or cosmetic nurse expert and educator. She's incredible in that sort of field. Yeah,
she's very well known in the industry, done everything, worked for Allergan, worked for Dr. Moroshnik as his injector, who's a Sydney-based plastic surgeon. She's been around, used to work in Harley Street in the UK. We've
obviously had Fiona, so that's more of our wellness nutrition side. We've had Gary Goro doing meditation. We've had a few people coming on talking about general sort of parts of the industry, like we had Richard Arnott from Mondial. They're sort of a smaller distributor of some skincare products and devices. So we're not, we're very deliberate in that we're not picking anyone's side or anyone's brand or anyone's product. We are very open, and this is an open invite to anyone listening. If you've got something interesting to say, please reach out and say hi. We can't promise that we can always have everyone on. We've luckily got to the point where we've sort of reached a capacity in terms of recording, but we can always plan things for the future. We don't limit ourselves to surgery, for example. If you've got something that makes you look good or feel good, great, come on, let's have a chat.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say aesthetics and not pigeonholing it to be clinical or wellness or surgeon or injecting, because it kind of is that. And when you're saying meditation, we know that that's lowering the stress and lowering the cortisol, and that's going to have a topical effect of what we look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the guests that we didn't mention was Dr. Shab Mira Skandari. So she's a clinical psychologist who, we want to explore, are we taking things too far sometimes? Are we making people feel worse about themselves if we just say yes to everything they want. So we've been I think we're trying to be as ethical as we can about not pushing anyone's agenda and recognizing our own limits in this industry and doing things, I guess, as medically as well as ethically as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that I've realized, and probably you've realized as well, Jake, is that when you're looking at someone as a whole, all these sort of niche areas, they're almost operating in isolation, whether it be nutrition, whether it be meditation, whether it be cosmetic intervention, whether it's exercise and so on. We really need all of them.
Yes.
To be a fully functioning person who's going to live hopefully a long and meaningful, successful life. If you just focus on eating good, but you don't exercise and you've got a really bad mental headspace, you're going to suffer. You get these people who go to the gym 24/7 and get injectables galore.
Yeah.
But they're unhappy. They've got a bad mental space. So it's like what we've realized is that all of this stuff needs to come together to be a complete person almost.
Yes. It's a bigger puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely that disconnect between someone like from Jake's background, for example, and someone like Fiona, and how it's not that one person's right and one person's wrong. It's like we actually need to work together on how we can take both of our skill sets and knowledge and help people to live better, or to give them arm them with more information.
Yeah. After the break, Jake and David talk about the challenges, trends, and their future goals in the industry. But first, a word from our sponsors. Community, can I share with you skincare's hottest secret right now? Well, Murad Skincare is growing a hype following with therapists and clients from Subiaco to Sydney. The original doctor brand, Murad Skincare, helps your clients achieve their goals through professional salon treatments, clinically proven products, and easy lifestyle advice. The team at Murad are kindly offering our beauty industry community their hottest skincare secret with a free Murad product pack for the first 25 listeners. That is right, a free Murad product pack for the first 25 listeners. All you have to do is email kbacon@murad.com. Again, that's kbacon@murad.com, and mention that you heard this on the Beauty Industry podcast and the pack is yours. Trust me, your clients and your skin will be thrilled that you now have the secret. And now, back to the episode. I love that. I'm wondering, you're both males, good looking.
I think David is.
How do you navigate the world of beauty therapist, female-driven beauty industry?
Go on, you can start, David, seeing as you're...
I've been doing it for such a long time. I think that's one of the hardest things is managing people, is finding your style. And I think these days more than ever, just because you own a business or you hold a title, that doesn't mean anything to anyone. Like, you don't get respect just because you own a business or you are someone's boss. You have to earn that respect, and you need to learn how to communicate with people. And as you said, when I did our podcast with you, is learning how to adapt your communication style, learning people's skills, how to get the best out of someone, what's driving them, what's motivating them.
Yes.
How do I lead them in the correct path, which is you want it to be like synergistic in that the business is achieving its goals while you're also helping those people that work for you or with you achieve their goals as well. So finding out what drives people, and just softening. I mean, I've definitely had to soften as a person.
Yeah.
I'm very like you, D-type personality, extremely direct, fast, get it done. What's the bottom line? And that doesn't work with people generally in this industry. You need to just take a breath, breathe, communicate with them on their level. And I don't mean level as in beneath you, just it's different.
Yes.
It's a different form of communication. It's understanding where they're coming from. So it definitely has its challenges, but in some ways it has its advantages as well.
What about you, Jake? Because I guess from an injectable point of view, you're talking to mostly women, maybe? You can
that's
correct
right.
me?
I don't have any exact figures, but I would assume 95% plus of my clients are female. That's certainly not because it's only offered to females. It's by and large, men are increasing in our demographic, but yes, it is a female-dominated sphere, and I guess that's probably just because females are a lot more in tune with their bodies, their health. Men are notoriously bad at doing things like going to the GP or looking after themselves generally, so doing those more pampering or superficial treatments are yet to filter through to the mainstream, but we are definitely noticing more men coming through our doors. I haven't noticed clients explicitly saying, I wanted you because you're a male doctor or a female doctor. I don't know if people seek people out for those particular reasons, but I guess people have voiced their faith in having a doctor versus someone trained in a different specialty. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. There are some very talented nurse injectors and there's some really bad doctors out there, and everything in between. So I feel like if you're a consumer, just do your research on whoever your injector or practitioner or therapist is and get to know them. Seek out their social media. How are they representing themselves? Can you hear them talk, or do they run a podcast where you can maybe get to know me and sort of hear a little bit of my philosophy? You've got to be comfortable with that person. They may not be the greatest injector in the world, but if they're offering you a very safe and ethical and functional treatment that works for you, then that's good. But going back to the male thing, have you noticed therapists have a clash with you or not a clash with you being a male, David?
I think there's a preconceived notion that because I'm a man, I don't know what I'm talking about, or that the wool can be pulled over my eyes, or I don't know how long the treatment should take, or I know exactly what's going on. I've been doing it for a long time, but there is that sort of, you're not from this world, you couldn't possibly understand. I
do wonder whether, because I work in female-dominated clinics, apart from you as the only other male staff member, but I wonder if it's easier in some respects that you do have a little flavour of male versus female.
Absolutely.
A lot of therapists and clinics that I've worked in, anecdotally, there's been drama seemingly just because of the estrogen in the room.
That's correct.
And like you said, the personality clashes. It's not just being female or male. But I think having a mix of talent and age as well makes a really successful kind of clinic.
It's interesting that you say age there, because I used to hire a lot of young therapists fresh out of beauty school, and people would go, Tamara, you're crazy. And I would say, I can mold them. They've got the skills. They're straight out of beauty school, but I'm going to now embed all of these great habits. Where I think some people are afraid of the new therapist. They just want somebody who's got 3 years, 5 years plus of experience, which is, they've got bad habits sometimes, which is not always the right thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's almost, it's easier to teach someone from scratch rather than having them to unlearn everything.
Yes. David, you went from one clinic to 3 clinics. That's huge. How did you do that?
Well, I'm very lucky that I've got an amazing business partner, Cassandra Smith, who's been on our podcast a couple of times, and we've worked together for 6 years, maybe a bit more. So she came on board with one of my clinics, and the clinic was basically not doing very well. We had another business partner there that exited the business and left it in a pretty bad way, and Cassandra came along and basically saved the day. She comes from a beauty therapy background, came on board as a manager, and then an opportunity came up to buy another franchise, and we decided to do it together, and that's sort of grown from there. So having someone on my team, or us working together as a cohesive unit, where she's got that beauty therapy background, that real understanding. She's been in the trenches, she's done the treatments, she's done 100 Brazilian underarms in one day. She understands. So from going from 1 to 3 clinics, having a business partner who has a skill set that complements you, because you can't be good at everything.
Correct.
And if you think, it's great to work on your weaknesses for sure, but to recognize where your shortcomings are as a person or a professional, and then teaming up with someone who you trust, who you can communicate well with, that has a complementary skill set, makes you a formidable team. So I think the big secret to that success is having a business partner. And just growing slowly. I didn't go from 1 to 3 clinics in a week or a year. This has been over the last sort of 10 years, where built up a clinic, it's been successful, opportunities come up, we've purchased another. So it's a process of, and also having trust from the people that are involved, like from the franchise model as well, the people that actually own the franchisor side, I guess building their trust and knowledge of who you are, how you operate, and how you're potentially going to be able to run multiple clinics, because each one of these clinics has got 10 staff members. You've got
their machines.
There's all the machines, equipment. There's a lot to do, a lot of responsibility, and a lot of investment goes in. So it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. But working with the right people, and not being afraid to give away some of that pie. I think a lot of people have that mentality of, I want everything for myself.
Correct.
Whereas I'd rather have 20% or 30% of a much bigger pie, and have great people around me who I can bounce ideas off, who I can learn from, who I can impart knowledge on, have that sort of back and forth relationship. So I love the idea of working with other people.
Yeah, beautiful. And we've not actually had anyone from a franchise on the podcast before. So I think our guests will be screaming in their cars, Tamara, ask him what it's like to own a franchise. I mean, obviously you've got 3 clinics now, so there's a lot of pros about it. Otherwise you would have said goodbye at one.
Yes.
What is the best thing about working for a franchise or with a franchise?
There's a lot of stuff that you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
And some people might say that's a good thing, that's a bad thing. Some people want complete control over every facet of their business, which is not wrong. But the advantage of the franchise model is that you pay a certain amount of money back to the franchisor to take care of a lot of these things for you. So such as like your marketing, all of your materials, the software system, your insurances, your policies, your procedures, having a support team there to help you when you need to terminate someone, or you've got a difficult situation with a client, we've got in-house counsel. So you've got a lot of the back-end infrastructure, which allow you to focus on customer service, driving sales, being on the ground and actually in your business, rather than just getting bogged down in trying to get your website right and what's being posted on social media. Or
you still have control over who you hire,
absolutely,
fire, etc.
So for someone that wants total control of every facet of the business, it's probably not for them. But I definitely couldn't have probably run 3 businesses completely on my own without bringing in partners. So for me, it's like having a business partner, essentially, because I guess the model that I'm involved in, the franchisor owns a percentage of the business and the franchisor owns a percentage of the business. So they've got a vested interest in making sure that the franchise is successful, which I think is different from a lot of franchise models out there where they just make their money off royalties and selling like whether it be goods or consumables to that business. Whereas these guys actually they want it to be successful. Yes.
And Jake, talking about kind of partners and people there to support in the business, how do you support other injectors? And in your role, you're traveling around and you're doing a lot of education. Is that a big part of it?
Yeah, the injectable industry is a funny one. There is no formal path, and we've touched on this a few times with new nurses or doctors trying to get in the industry. There is no syllabus. There are a number of third-party courses around that, I can't comment on whether they offer you the full complete skill set to then start a career. With my role with Allergan, it's new. I started it last year, and it's not a job. I consult for them. I get asked to go to events. I might do little workshops here and there, but it's not a daily thing. But I really enjoy it, and even once you've done that, you're trying to inspire people as well as just teach them a skill. What we've learnt from doing these podcasts and speaking to our experts is you've got to have that X factor, or that skill of talking and working with people and enjoying it. You can't go into this industry with the sole aim of making money. I just don't think that's ever going to work, and I think every guest we've had on has sort of resonated with that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your question. So I've forgotten. I've got off on track. Yeah.
Just the support, I guess.
Yeah,
and
support.
As you're saying, it's difficult for injectors because you're your own business and you're traveling around.
Yeah.
Who do you look to, for that help?
Yeah. I do get a lot of messages on Instagram with people stuck. Most injectors are kind of autonomous, or they're in a little room on their own somewhere.
Yeah.
It's quite a lonely business, and I remember when I started in the UK, I had the similar experience. I was like a sole injector working, in effectively a hired room in a clinic, and away you go. So, you've got to think about all these things from marketing, your website, booking systems, branding, consent forms, and it just never ends. So I feel like there's probably an angle in this industry for doing something similar to what you do with the beauty industry of formalizing a support network. I've started that in a very, very small way, but within the Allergan community. So there's about 60 of us talking on a WhatsApp group now.
Amazing.
In about, I think it's about 16 countries.
Yeah.
So we'll just, sometimes it's just have a bit of a laugh, but often we discuss tricky cases, problems, new techniques, things that are coming in the pipeline. So I think just reaching out to your local injector network, wherever you are. Let's say you're in Dubbo, and you're wondering who to go to if you have a problem or just a tricky client or something. Just see who's around you. Reach out, send them a message on Instagram. Say, hey, I'm in the town next door. Do you fancy meeting for a coffee and talking about what's going on in our town?
Yes.
I think that sort of start and growing a network where you are also builds you authenticity. It makes you a local influencer, even if it's micro niche. And from there on, you do develop a little community and a network, and then you can start running your own little training sessions or refer to each other for the things that you don't do. So I think there's definitely space in the industry for more things like that. Like you said, it's a competitive thing, and a lot of people are quite reticent to sort of get out of their little comfort bubble. But I think, if you're going to take yourself seriously, you have to accept that you are not the master of everything. And there are plenty of other people out there that can work together.
Yes. And that's exactly why we started, because it's lonely. In business, or even in your treatment room, you're surrounded by four walls. You don't know what's going on. You don't talk to others. So, Beauty Industry Injects Part 2.
Yeah.
You can head up that project.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
I'm wondering if you guys can share some of the challenges. I think it's a glossy world out there, and we look at 3 clinics and doctor and injector, and we go, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to achieve that. What are some of the challenges that you faced along the way that kind of bring down those amazing titles to being a bit more real?
No, David, back to you.
The challenges. I think I sort of alluded to a little bit before, is just finding an industry or a role that you're passionate about, and not chasing the money, but to chase the success. If you love what you do, you're passionate about it, you're inspired every day to get up and do it, then the money will come. That's a byproduct of being successful. Yeah. And I think to get through the tough times where you're not making money, you're potentially losing money, you've got staff leaving, you've got client complaint. If you're not passionate about what you do, you won't get through that. You won't get through it. You'll give up and you'll go do something else. So I think that rather than chasing something for the sake of chasing it, is finding your passion. And if you're passionate about the industry, then you can get through most things. Yes.
Yeah. There's like a sweet spot.
Yeah.
There's like 3 little circles: doing what you love, making money, giving back.
Yeah.
If you're just doing what you love and you're not making any money, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
And if you're always giving back, you're not doing what you love, well, what's the point? So you've got to have those 3 little circles that kind of combine, and that's where you wake up every day and you love it.
Well, you hear of so many people who just get up and they do the same job for 20 years that they hate. To me, I can't.
No.
I can't process that. I don't know how you would, when you look at how long we live for and like how long you've got a quality of life, why you would waste so much time doing something that you just can't stand, or that you just dread getting out of bed every day.
Yes.
How are you ever going to be successful in that? Because it's all the intangible factors that make you successful. It's that spark, that X factor that Jake was alluding to. And if you're just hating life because you don't like what you do, then that's never going to come. You're just going through the motions. You're not living.
Yeah.
I think it's the same within the injecting community. There are a lot of new injectors or people wanting to get into the industry, not fully really understanding it. It does come across as quite a glamorous career, we're making people look wonderful and feeling wonderful, but there's a lot of hard work that goes in to get to that level where you can deliver that in a seamless way without problems or difficulties. So yeah, I think for those new injectors, there's always this quandary of how do I get into it and where do I work? You know, David gets a lot of emails from people asking, you know, can you employ me? And they don't have any experience, and it's hard for them to sort of make that leap. So I think when we had Penny on, we've sort of tried to give a few ideas, and we've recorded another one that goes into a bit more depth with that. But I think if you're a nurse injector wondering where to work, try to find, obviously identifying a clinic that's going to work with you day to day. You've got to get there and back. But also try and find a doctor that's going to support you and potentially mentor you or train you, exactly what you're offering people in the beauty industry, but within the aesthetics industry. As a broader kind of challenge within the industry, there's this whole issue of regulatory changes that, to be honest, we're all sort of guessing what may or may not happen.
Yes.
You know, within our space, there's been a few high-profile incidents where clients have suffered, and so as I don't want to say a knee-jerk reaction, but as a reaction to that, some of the regulatory bodies have sort of jumped on one or two of the issues that, you know, we try to do as best as we can in our industry. And there's this question of, do doctors need to be on site, or can nurses still operate independently?
Yes.
Where is the right place for injectables to take place? Is it okay to be in the back of a hairdresser, or should you be in a plastic surgeon's clinic? You know, there's all these sort of questions that, to be honest, I don't have the answer to, and I don't think the regulatory bodies have the answer to yet. So, you know, if you're going to go into this industry with a short-term goal of make money and inject anti-wrinkle treatments, I think you need to look at your 5 and 10-year plan, not tomorrow's plan, because things may change tomorrow, who knows,
Yes.
where suddenly you are, you know, a nurse who've set up your own clinic and suddenly you need a doctor, if that happens. So I just think that you should, again, buddy up with multiple injectors, multiple doctors, be part of that conversation and try and influence it if you can. You know, be upstanding and voice good practice and work in an ethical way and do as well as you can for your clients, and then you're kind of on the path to success.
Yeah, great advice. I'm wondering there, you touched on a few different treatments. What are some of the trends that you're seeing at the moment? We've come off the back of Beauty Expo, and there's a lot of hype around, you know, a certain device which is allowing beauty therapists to inject HA into the skin, or inject needle, however it looks like. I don't know a lot of information on it, but there's been a big uproar from the beauty industry. What's your kind of take on these crazy trends that are brand new, and I guess we've got no research behind it yet?
Yeah, it's really hard when new devices come out. I tend to be someone who watches from afar and sees what happens. You know, with any new device, it's got to be TGA approved, meaning approved to be used safely and within the law in Australia. So presumably this new needling device that you're alluding to has. I don't use these devices myself, but I know that often nurses, you know, when they run their own clinics, they're looking after skin as well as injectables, as well as offering facials, and they're sort of the whole package. And so when beauty therapists get their hand on these new devices, there's always this issue of, firstly, are they encroaching on their territory, their patch, and that kind of competitive sort of argument, but also the safety aspect. So I guess the issues with this new needling device are, you know, basically it looks like a pen, like a big pen that you hold in your hand, and it literally needles the skin. So it's creating little puncture wounds in the skin. And, you know, in some clinics it's used to sort of improve collagen and the general texture of the skin. But the issue is the depth of the needles, the width of the needles, the sterility, where are they getting the HA from? All of these questions, which, to be honest, I don't have the answer to, but at some point you would hope these things are sort of being regulated so that there are no incidents like we've just alluded to. But I don't have any good sort of evidence to say that these things are safe or not safe. I don't want to sort of say or stand up and say something that I just don't know the answer to. And
look, we've seen the damage that just lash extensions can cause, you know, from therapists. I think, you know, for me, I wouldn't want to be doing a treatment like that I don't know every vein, every muscle, every movement that's in the face, because why would I want to put my client through that risk, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, even lasers, you know, David, your clinics are running multiple lasers with the potential to injure, but trained in the right way.
Yeah.
Great results.
Absolutely. I mean, this comes down to having good equipment that's reputable, reliable, that puts out the energy output that it says it is.
Yes.
And then training your staff appropriately, making sure that they've got all the information, they're armed with the right technique, what to do if they have an adverse event, how to manage it, how to avoid it as much as possible. But I think that no matter who you are, whether you're a plastic surgeon that's been doing what they do for 20, 30 years, or you're a therapist or anything in between, complications happen to everyone. Things go wrong. I guess the trick is, how do you keep them to a minimum, and how do you manage them when they do happen?
Yes. Yeah, amazing. So Inside Aesthetics, lots of amazing guests, lots of amazing episodes. What's on the horizon? What can we expect in the future?
Well, we've reached episode 22 that came out last week. And, you know, firstly, we've had really great feedback from listeners from all over the place. We've got, obviously, our core listener is in Australia, but, you know, we can sort of go into the back end of the podcast publishing software and see where people are listening. And that's all we can see. We can't see what town or anything else. But we know we've got a big listener group in America, the UK, smaller extent in Europe, but lots of different countries. And we recently hit, was it 11,000 downloads now?
Yeah.
Which is great. You
Well
know, we're
done.
growing. We can see that it's not exponential, but it's definitely growing every month. And so we've recently sort of looked at the offering and the product that we're putting out, and we did a bit of market research with our listeners and realized that probably some of the early episodes were a bit too long. So we've been very receptive to get ideas from people, and sort of, you know, we made this up as we went along, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
So, we've tried to shorten our episodes to around 45 minutes. It's not always the case, but something like that.
Yeah.
We think that most people listen in their car, or when they're kind of, you know, shaving or putting on their makeup. It's not something that people sit down to and do nothing else with. So we've got to give people manageable bite-sized sort of podcasts. David came up with the absolute genius idea of trying to record 2 episodes per guest, because we were really struggling with our time. You know, I'm sort of running around injecting. David's trying to run 3 clinics in 2 states, and so if we, you know, each guest has actually been really happy with that, because it's more exposure for them, but of course we can tackle more topics and go into things in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
And we're sort of on the cusp of potentially doing our own YouTube channel.
Yeah.
For now, we will probably use the video sort of content that we've already got from our previous podcasts. We've been, you know, recording all of our guests bar one, and so we'll use that content for now. But as we go, maybe we'll produce original content just for the YouTube channel. You know, we're sort of going down a little bit more of the business angle with people like yourself. We've got Drew Hankin coming on in a few weeks to talk about branding and SEO and the deep side of Facebook and Instagram and all this interesting stuff that clinics will find gold, but it's not necessarily aesthetically related, but it's part of how you run your business.
Yeah.
So yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Also got a legal podcast coming up soon. We're going to help. We live in this litigious society where everyone, you know, says they're going to call their lawyer when something goes wrong. Is helping healthcare professionals to better protect themselves, take better consent, what happens if they do end up in that situation, and also vice versa for the consumer. If they've had the wrong thing by them, the patient had the wrong thing done, or they've got an issue, how do they work towards resolving it? So I'm really excited to talk to someone about stem cells as well. We're trying to find someone to talk about that, because I feel that's like the next frontier of where we're sort of heading. So that's this sort of grey, murky area that it has a lot of promise, but there's no sort of regulation around it yet, or there's complications with that. So
I might have someone for you who I can't say names, can't say product, but they're actually working on towards the Nobel Prize, and so it's happening. It's happening. Which is
exciting.
Wow.
Exciting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's happening. And where can we find Inside Aesthetics? Of course, I'll put all the links in the show notes, but if you just want to pop a quick plug.
Sure. I guess the easiest way to message us and sort of keep up to date with, you know, which episodes coming out, etc., is our Instagram handle. So it's inside_aesthetics. We do run a website. it sort of mirrors a lot of what's happening on Instagram, but it's a good place to go to, and you can actually stream the podcast there if for whatever reason you can't listen to it on your phone. All of the links to actually listen to the podcast are through the Instagram account. So there's a little link just beneath our profile. So if you just click on there, and it'll give you all the options to download on your Apple phone, Android phone, listen to on SoundCloud, Spotify. It's on all the major sort of podcasting apps. Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're interested in coming on and having a chat to us, send us a DM, or you've got a guest in mind that you think would be that people would love to hear from, that we'd like to chat to. We're always looking for suggestions or people that they can, referrals.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
And any feedback on, what you would like to, if you make any suggestions on how we're doing the podcast, if you think still 45 minutes is too long, or, you want more or whatever, just let us know. We're happy to sort of mould our thing according to the majority.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with us today.
Thanks, Tamara.
Thank you.
What a pair. As I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, Jake, David and I met in their recording space in Sydney for a little podcast cross-pollination where we both featured each other on our channels this week. So if you're keen to hear the flip side of this conversation where they interview me, you can absolutely do that by heading over to their channel shortly. The biggest thank you, as always, to you for your time and your ears for listening to today's episode. I've been getting so many messages from you all who are listening and loving the content lately, and a big special hello to our international listeners who I absolutely adore. There's a big bunch of you beautiful humans in the USA, particularly California and Texas. Hello. Big love from the UK. Hello. And Canada. And of course, our sister country, New Zealand. Hello, hello. It means the world to think that you guys are listening from places I could only dream to visit one day. I'm sure you know all the details by now. However, if you're new, welcome, and you want more beauty industry goodness, you can join our online memberships, book a team development session in your space with myself, come to our networking events, and even keep up to date with us on all of the latest news and otherwise on our socials at Beauty Industry and myself at Tamara Shaw Reid. Until next time, stay connected.